right. Welcome to the Pro Mindset Academy podcast. Today we're going to talk about how to guide your child in challenging situations.
Yep.
Let's just start with maybe what a challenging situation looks like.
I think back to when I was a kid, and I think back to when I would go for a trial, or I had a tough match, or I was going through, tryouts or certain matches. And so for a lot of the kids that we work with, the challenging moments are the ones where they feel like they've had a bad game, or they it might be a new situation when they're trialing for or starting from a new team, or their confidence is low, and they are they're in a bit of a low confidence phase at the moment, having an injury and going through injuries and coming back from an injury. But typically the challenging moments are they haven't had the best match, and they come off the match and they're not feeling the best, and the challenging moments or the situation comes with, like, how does a parent navigate that conversation? And so I guess we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts, the mistakes that we've made and other parents can make, and how to correct those things.
Yeah, and I'll probably just add this because I noticed it a fair bit recently where kids after races, games, matches, all that kind of stuff, where they have gotten quite emotional, either like crying and that kind of stuff after the game, which generally is a tell to me that throughout the game there's been a build-up of emotion,
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've contained it, and they've,
Yeah.
as best as they can,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and then
Yeah.
after the match it's just like, or after the race, I seen it today at the girls' cross country, kids just get really emotional. It's almost like they don't know what to do. So that's that. And then, yeah, like you said, the do's and don'ts, I suppose, are important. What I think I wanted to touch on first, and then we can get into the specifics, is, I think it's easy in situations like what we're talking about, these challenging situations, to try and fix the person, and also just like reassure them, and especially as parents, because all we want is what's best for the child, right? That's literally all we want.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with consoling the child in these moments, but there's also certain ways to go about it, and certain things to say in the heat of the moment that are going to add value, and also that the child is going to absorb. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's okay, everything's going to be okay. It's nice, and I'm not saying like don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's a very generic response, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe let's just start with the don'ts.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
I think the don'ts, or one of the common mistakes, is trying to fix and trying to give advice too early, or try to console when they are still heightened. And we mentioned this before. It's like, this is not, once again, this isn't blanket statement, but generally speaking, someone doesn't want to hear like you did, particularly boys, but someone doesn't want to hear you did a good job when they really feel like they didn't, and they're really frustrated and they're really upset at that time.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the don'ts is trying to fix and trying to get them to feel a certain way, instead of naturally letting them have their experience and be upset. We're going to talk later on in another episode about, the inner work of the parent, but typically why that, maybe I get in my head of myself, but why parents do that, and why I have done that in the past, is because we want to see our kid happy, and we want them to feel good about themselves. And so we say, hey, you did a great job, or we try to console them and we try to fix how they're feeling, which is nothing necessarily wrong with that. But what really does work is letting them have their experience. So one of the common don'ts is giving advice too soon. Too soon would be when they're still quite emotional, or particularly I see this often with mums and sons, is a mum wants to help their son or daughter feel good. And it's like, hey, you did good today. I thought you did great. But the son really feels like I did terrible and doesn't want to hear what the mum has to say. So I guess unsolicited or unwelcomed or not appropriate time advice would be a don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is kind of what you're saying anyway. But, a kid, anybody knows when they haven't put in 100% effort. They know. Everybody knows, right? So there's no point in, I don't mean this in a harsh way, but there's no point in lying and beating around the bush. That doesn't mean you just like, that wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? Getting into them straight away. That's not necessary. I think it's just important to realize, like, it's like people lying. You know what I mean? You and I know each other really well, but even when you're talking and having a conversation with someone that you don't know really well, you generally know when someone's lying, right? There's a pickup of the energy. So I think that's important to remember as a parent in everyday life as well. And then the other thing I was going to say is, because I see it a bit, is a bit of the blame game. You know what I mean? Like blaming. Oh yeah. I seen your head go down. Yeah, the ref shouldn't have made that decision. Or that kid definitely went out. They shouldn't have scored that try and won the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They might be facts, right? There might be just straight up mistakes. But in my opinion, playing the blame game is a vicious cycle, and it's on repeat, and it's in a circular motion, and then it's just, it carries over into everything. So I mean, that would be my advice: just being cautious of responding that way. I don't think it adds any value at all. I think there's, it's not that it can't be discussed upon reflection. I noticed that kid went out too, but it's not. It's not. If that kid.
Great point.
Called it. It's the same thing with the blaming and the lying. There's no point in just not mention it. You know what I mean? Or shun the child down if he goes, "Oh, did you see him run out?" Like, I'm not talking like, get over it, mate. Like, it's not important. I'm just saying there's an approach.
There's an acknowledgement, but we want to avoid playing, what a mentor of mine calls the victim mentality. Mark England, he calls it victim mentality. And the victim mentality is, in some way, someone did something wrong or making excuses. So I think, largely our child's mindset and their attitude and their emotions do come from us as parents, through DNA, however it's passed on. Our children get more from us than our eye color and what we physically look. They also get a lot of our fears and our insecurities and our own self-image and deeper mental, emotional, and even spiritual things that come through that process of creating a child. And then as they are learning, they typically will mimic how we think and how we talk and our language and our mindset. So one of the do's is have the best mindset that you can, which we'll talk more about on the next episode. But to your point, I haven't found any use. And in fact, it's harmful to get into a mindset of, oh yeah, you didn't get much game time because of the coach's son was on and he favors him. Going into stories and creating stories and believing stories, whether it's necessarily true or accurate or not, not necessarily useful, about talking about making excuses or the ref did this or other players. We want our children, we want our children to take full responsibility for how they play, how they behave, their attitude and their effort. And one of the terms that we said here is guide, and this is a key term that I would like to use, is guide. We're not telling our kids necessarily, sometimes you can tell, but we're not telling them necessarily, we're not putting onto them necessarily. The best approach is guiding them to learn. Okay, why do you feel like that happened today? Getting them to, you're empowering them. It's not trying to fix, it's not trying to put our own, tell them necessarily what's going to be most helpful for our children short term and long term. Is guiding them to develop the attitude and the resilience and the way of thinking that is going to help them succeed in their sport and in life. It's guiding them and empowering them to really have the ability to overcome these challenges themselves. We don't want to fix. And I've been using the analogy of when our child learned to walk, and you were a bum crawler, but a little bit different. Most kids, it's something along the lines of they lay down, then they're on their belly, they can roll over, and then they can sit up, and they have to do that a bunch of times, and they get on their knees a bunch of times, and obviously it takes time, and they can start to stand up, and they fall down 100 times, maybe more, maybe less, right? And then they step and they fall, and they step and they fall. But in that approach, we kind of think it's cute and they're learning. It's the same with this stuff. It's one of the don'ts that we want to avoid is blaming or reacting to our child's behavior, how they played. We don't want to put our own fears and insecurities onto our children. And the typical thing is that we react, for example, typically with dads are typically more, but not always, generally speaking, but I've seen many variations of this, isn't it true? But typically there's one parent, particularly often the dad, where he's more of like tactical. You should have done this, you should have done that, right? And that there might be a time and place for that, right? If the child's listening and going, yeah, okay, cool, they're taking it in. But if they're dropping their head while you're talking to them, that's telling you something, right? But point that I'm making is we can react because we're upset and we're embarrassed and disappointed about how they played. If that's the case, if you're getting upset, disappointed, embarrassed about how they played, that's something for you to look at. If you're reacting, they didn't play well, and it's like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And you're getting frustrated or whatever with their performance, that's something for you to look at, right? Yeah. And so the don't is react to their performance, behavior, because reactions are always based around some type of emotional reaction, which is always based in some type of fear.
Yeah, I think a word that's pretty commonly used and known is shame. You know what I mean? There's zero value added in shaming your child, and that doesn't mean that you can't. That doesn't mean that you should condone bad behaviour. No. You've got to, I think there is a fine line that people struggle with these days.
Yes.
You're not going to, a teammate, a child who's, aggressive to other team members and all that kind of stuff, that's not on in my books, right? But so it's not to condone bad behaviour, but it's also, shame is powerful, right? And we carry that over as a child through sport, but also into adulthood and stuff like that. So I think that's important to remember. So with some do's, the easiest one that's kind of baseline that to always remember is, with everything, is to focus on the amount of effort that the child's put in. It's if we can get caught up in too much performance-based dialogue, which is like you were saying about the technical stuff, and that time and place. But I've found with myself, my kids, other kids, all that kind of stuff, emphasizing the importance on effort. Because if you, the thing with effort is like if you put in 100% effort, you will get results in whatever you do. It's just as simple as that. You don't get results without effort. That's just a fact, right? So it's the results is a byproduct of effort. We've spoken about it before. So I think that's an easy one. I sort of just said it there, and you started the conversation with it. In the heat of the moment, it might not always be the right time to reflect. So timing that reflection, I think, is important. So you want to. Some kids might be able to do it while they're emotional, but most people, kids specifically, they need a bit of down regulation physiologically before they can mentally absorb any type of information, adults included, right? So that's kind of important. And then things that we do when we're coaching and whatnot, as well as reflection, because it's super duper important. I think it's equally important to focus on the good things as well. What you did good as well, whether that's before or after the reflection might vary, but I just think it's important to highlight those things, because it's so easy as kids to beat ourselves up, especially kids that are high performing kids, right? They naturally are hard on themselves. So it's good to bring a bit of light to the situation, focus on that. What are some other do's?
Do respond kindly, do respond honestly, do respond lovingly. So if the don't is react, and I will just give you a side note. I would recommend, and I said this last night where I run for PMA in the academy. I do a monthly parents education session, and we talk and we discuss certain things with their kids. And I mentioned this last night, but the reactions sort of come out of us. But so just look at where you are reacting would be some sort of side invitation or offering that I would offer parents. Where do you react? Because this is a good insight into where your own fears and insecurities and judgments are. And we don't want to be correcting behavior or behaving from reactions. We don't want to be reacting from that place because that's from a hurt place. We want to respond. So a reaction to fix or a reaction to correct, we want to respond lovingly and kindly. So do become as calm and grounded and poised yourself when you're watching your child play. Certainly cheer, but are you doing it in a controlled way, or are you oh and they look over you just once they've missed the goal and you're like and they internally think, oh my God, I've let my parents down, right? So notice your reactions, notice when they happen, how you react, and then I would recommend do go about doing some version of the opposite, responding. So when they come in, where your previous reaction would be, oh, what's it? Don't cry, don't be upset. It's like you did good today. Your response might be something along the lines of when your son is upset and your response might be something along the lines of, hey buddy, it's okay. These days happen, and you're just there with them. You may say something, you may not. You may talk, you may not. But it's a large part of where the best guidance and parenting comes from is a energy of love. It's an energy of unconditional love, compassion. Our heart can break for them still, but we're responding kindly and skillfully rather than reacting.
Yeah, that's kind of the theme here, isn't it? It's the respond rather than the react, because when we react, the place that we're coming from when we are reacting, it's not that place of love like you spoke of.
No.
Whereas opposed to responding, it's responding from that place, and that's can only be good for the parent and obviously the child. I think we'll probably touch on it a little bit more in the next episode, that we focus more on parents and stuff as well. But you said before how like our children are us, right? In one way or another, like nature nurture, of course. And it's it's valuable and helpful to sometimes show a bit of empathy and put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself how you would want to be treated in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, that still helps me to this day. Yeah. It's I just think it's very powerful. It's not easy to do in the heat of the moment, but I've found many a times where I do that with the girls and other kids and other people, even to that extent, is it helps with the emotional attachment to the situation, and you're able to be like, oh, okay, hold on a second. No, actually, I wouldn't want that. I just want, want someone just to hug me and say, let's go get let's go get something to eat or something like that, and not talk about it right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's a tool that everybody could to get value from.
That's great. It's interesting and cool to hear you say that's been helpful for you. One of the most helpful things for me in my parenting and then sort of coaching kids is the do, which we're going to talk about in the next episode, is do inner work on yourself. Do look at your own fears, your own insecurities, your own reactions. Do look at your own needs, and so we're not projecting our own stuff onto our kids. Also can be helpful to ask your kids how they want to be related to in those situations. What do they need? best to usually have those conversations not at that time, but at a different time. Now, most kids probably won't know what they need, but the better, one of the best, why I'm good at helping my kids and other kids through challenging situations is because I've done it with myself so many times.
Yeah.
So do learn how to manage your own emotions and your own mind and your own insecurity and your own attitude and your own mindset in that way, so that you know how to help someone change a perspective. Because there's ways that they react to and ways that they don't. So the better you get at it, and my two boys are different. They actually need opposite things at different times. They respond differently. So I do have had to learn how to respond to both. My eldest son is very much like me, so I've known exactly how to parent him because it's been like essentially how I liked it to be. My other son has been the exact opposite. So I've had to spend time learning how he feels loved and how he is best supported to get through those challenging situations, what he needs. And I've made a bunch of mistakes with him because I've done it the other as my other kid. And so do learn about that. We'll talk about next episode. There was one other thing that I was going to say, but I've forgotten it for now.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember on what you just said is the only way you, in that example, have been able to turn up for Rabs because he's different, right? Different to Mace, who's similar to you, is because you've done the work on yourself. If you hadn't done that, it's obviously a lot easier to associate with someone that there's a resonance with, and when it's different, it's not easy to do unless you're willing to do that, right? And so that's not easy, and that's probably why a lot of parents do struggle to relate to particular children, because they're thinking like that's not how I would respond and behave. How am I supposed to do this? They don't know, right? And obviously we'll go into that in more depth in the next episode. But the last thing I wanted to say was, like most things, really, it's you used the word mistakes. We're pretty familiar with this stuff, right? And we still make mistakes, and that is a part of it. So I think it's super, super important for parents to realize that you're not going to get this right every single time.
Yeah.
Not possible.
No.
No one does it perfectly. No one ever will do it perfectly. However, for me, the important thing when I'm thinking of my own children in this case is to own that when I do make mistakes.
Yeah.
If I say something and I say it and I'm like, "Ooh, shouldn't have said that." Later on, I'll say, Nora, I actually didn't mean what I said before. I'm not sure why I said it. I'm pretty sure I was just angry and I took that out on you. I was a bit emotional. I didn't need to say that, Nora. Don't make a fucking excuse for saying it. Just own it. You know what I mean? And recognize that nobody's perfect, but it's the power of continuously toning up that makes the difference.
Yeah, it takes conscious effort for the parent to parent how they want to, at least at the start. Now it's more habitual for me because I've done it so much, but at least at the start, if you're intending to parent better and different than probably what you got and how you parented in the past, it's going to take conscious effort, but I cannot describe to you in words how important it is and how beneficial it is. As a parent, I think most parents would agree, right, that our kids are right up there, if not the most important thing in our life. We're doing a lot of the things for them. And with that, there is the potential, if we're not doing this stuff well, to create a divide and build up resentment from the kid to the parent. It can clash. It can take us further apart when people are trying to be fixed, because ultimately what we're doing here is you want to create a safe space for your child where they can fail a bunch of times, they can lose a bunch of times, they can lose a match, they can cry, they can be upset, they can not make the team, they can get it all wrong, and they still know that at the end of the day you're there and you're not judging them, and you're there no matter what. Essentially, it's creating a safe space for them to come back to. But if you don't give them that, if they feel judged, or if they feel that it's not a safe space, it's not safe for them to mess up, it's not safe for them to get upset. Now, once again, you said before, caveat, if there's some bad, quote unquote, bad behavior, we need to change that. but we don't make the person wrong. We just say this behavior is not good. You got to change it. Not that you're a bad person. It's the behavior that is not okay, right? But point that I'm making is this is very important for our relationship now with our children, how our child grows up and sees themselves and how they live their life, but also for our relationship. There's critical moments here that happen where when this is going on, if you mess this up and if you're not getting it right and you're not getting it right time and time and again and you're not improving, then this can create a sense in your child's mind that, you know, they're not safe with you and they might lose trust with you, or might lose respect, might lose admiration. And so if it is important for you to have a strong relationship with your child, to help them through this, to guide them through this, yes, but also grow closer through it. This is also what we want to do. We want to guide our child, but we want to grow closer through these situations, through sport and through challenging situations, to build our relationship even tighter. Then you must learn some of the things that we're talking about and what we're going to be talking about on the next episode, which is essentially that the way you're going to parent your child is how you parent yourself. And we have to do the inner work to get to the place where we can parent our child the way that we want to parent them and is best for them. So that's what we'll talk about in the next episode.
Yeah, well said. Leave it there.